I've only shared this true story once before, but need to repeat it on this Shabbat of Mother's Day weekend. Years ago, the people who ran the telephone company in my wife's home state of Alabama had a brilliant idea for increasing business. They went to Bear Bryant, the legendary football coach at the University of Alabama, a revered personality throughout the state. The coach jump-started, in case you didn't know, Temple member George Lapidus of blessed memory's career as a legendary sports writer. Bear Bryant coached his last football game in Memphis, the 1982 Liberty Bowl, after which he formally announced his retirement, and sadly, he died 28 days later. Much earlier in his career, however, Bear Bryant was offered a large sum of money to do a telephone commercial for the phone company. All he had to do was speak 3 simple words. All he was told was to look into the camera and growl, "Call your mama." The phone company was sure that Alabama was full of young men, especially, eager to do anything the bear asked them to do. The thinking was that as soon as they saw the commercial, men and women would all run out and start making long-distance calls home. Coach Bryant agreed to the offer. But on the day of the filming, something unexpected happened. Everything was all set up in the studio. The lights were in place. The cameras were rolling. But when the light went on, Bear Bryant looked into the camera, but he didn't growl. Instead, his eyes welled up with tears, and in a choking voice, this intimidating football coach said, "Call your mama. I sure wish I could call mine." Ever since I ran across that story, I've been trying to understand why it not only touched me but bothered me. Partly, I think, it's the paradox of a man who had done so much. At the time, he was one of the most successful coaches in the history of college football, and here he was, frustrated and saddened by the thought of the one thing he could not do. So many of us are like that, are we not? We're too often more focused on what is beyond our reach than what is within it, more aware of what we've lost than what we've gained. That's why Jewish prayer has always been more about thanking God for what we already have rather than handing God our wish list of what we want. It's why I've always tried to frame funerals as celebrations of what we were lucky enough to have shared with someone we loved, even more than grieving for what we've lost. Mostly, though, I think at the heart of that Bear Bryant story is the reminder that there are things we need to do while we can still do them, and while there is still time, because one day it will be too late. Now, whether you can still call your mother in this lifetime or call on her wisdom forever, the sages of Judaism summed it up in one sentence. They said, God cannot be everywhere, so he created mothers. Even the Hebrew word for mom, 2 letters, Aleph, Mem, Em, is revealing. Ima is Aramaic, it's not Hebrew. The Hebrew word for mom, those 2 letters form the root word for truth, emet. If you've ever seen the logo of Yale, that's the Hebrew in it. emunah, faith, and the answer to every blessing we've been singing with Marissa throughout this service. Amen. That's right. The word mom is embedded in the response to every prayer. Now, my mom is from Brooklyn, where the renowned 20th century Jewish poet Charles Reznikov, whose wife, by the way, was the biographer of Golda Meir, he wrote a 28-word poem about his own mother. And as with all poems, every word counts. Listen to it. In her last illness, my mother took my hand in hers tightly. For the first time, I knew how calloused a hand it was and how soft was mine. Let's unpack this. In her last illness. What does that mean? Reznikov is letting us share in a very intimate and sad moment. His mother is dying. My mother took my hand in hers. When does a mother usually take her child's hand in hers? When they're crossing the street, wants to make sure that he, Reznikov, will be safe, or when she takes her child to the door on the first day of school, and then she leaves the child at the door and lets the child enter a whole new world by himself or herself. Or if she's teaching her child to drive, she puts her hand over his on the wheel. Usually when a mother takes a child's hand into hers, it is in order to protect him or care for him when they're at a crossroads or even a dangerous moment in his life. But this time is different. She is dying. So she takes his hand in hers tightly. It's unclear if the mother is conscious or not. Reznikov doesn't say, but either way, she and he understand how big is this moment of transition. She is leaving life, and he is staying. She is facing the unknown, and he is not. And so, just as she once held his hand so that he would not be afraid, now he holds her hand tightly so that she will not be afraid. For the first time, I knew how calloused a hand it was. Notice that it doesn't say, I saw or I felt, but instead, I knew for the first time how calloused a hand it was. Why this word? Because this is a moment of revelation for this adult Charles Reznikov. As this son looks at her hands for perhaps the last time, he has a moment of deep understanding of where these calluses came from. He suddenly realizes, as he has never realized before, just how hard his mother's work had been, how much she did in order to care for him, provide for him, protect him, and how soft was mine. At the same moment, he realizes how soft his hands are compared to hers. He realizes that he grew up with a cushion that his mother did not have, namely, his mother. Has he worked as long as she has? Did he sacrifice as much as she has? He realizes that he has not had the same tough life experiences that she had, thanks to her. He realizes that she has calluses on her hand and that his aren't the same. But there's one task that he and she still have to share, a task that will be hard for them both, the task of letting go. And so this time, she takes his hand instead of the other way around. When Reznikov was a child, he took her hand so that he would feel safe crossing the street. Now that she is crossing over into the next world, she takes his hand to give her confidence and lessen her fear. And then, though he does not say so, then after this moment of holding hands, they will each let go. The last thing he will ever do for his mother is what she did for him so many times in his childhood. He will hold her hand as she crosses over, and then they will let go. This beautiful poem, I think it's beautiful, reminds us to appreciate how much mothers protected us and cared for us when we were young, and to realize that if we are gifted to hold their hands as they cross over into the world that waits for them there, then on that day we will have to stay behind. So we should hold their hands tightly when they go. We should hold their hands as they once held ours in order to give them thanks and courage as they go on ahead of us and wait for us just beyond the horizon. As we begin this week, the Hebrew month of Iyar, between Passover and Shavuot, this month of transition when our Israelite ancestors journeyed from Egypt to Sinai, I wish to close with what the Talmud says about our deliverance from Egypt. In Tractate Sota 11b, here's the direct quote, my friends. It was because of the merit of the mothers and righteous women who lived in that generation that the entire Jewish people, our people, were delivered from Egypt. Happy Mother's Day to all. Call your mama, or call on her wisdom and her strength always. Amen.